There we go.
It says recording in progress, Bob.
Yeah. And just to let our viewers know, this is twice we've got together this week.
That's right. Right. It's twice. Double your pleasure.
Well, we hope so. Yeah.
This is Freewheeling Friday.
Well, if I had a three-wheel bike, I guess that would be good. I've only got a two-wheel bike.
So, when in our pre-production talk, we said we don't understand stuff anymore.
Well, it's been a long time since I understood stuff, and I think it's just getting worse. I know I can get up in the morning. I know the sun comes up in the east, or
No.
I'm told it comes up in the east.
No, it's quite the discussion that is going on in the world today about everything from the default of the U.S. to what's going on in Ukraine, to even such mundane things as whether there'll be fireworks on Canada Day
In cities in Canada, yeah.
in cities in Canada, because we don't want to disturb the birds
Or do we want to spend that money on things that are just totally meaningless?
yeah.
You can't put those kinds of things on our passport pictures pages anymore. So
Yeah, we haven't heard much about that from our listeners or readers, but of course it was only 4 days ago when we raised the question of, does it make any difference?
I guess, yeah, and coupled with that, as we were talking before, is if we're going to give up that kind of aspects of, does Canada really matter anymore? Do we really need borders? Should anybody just be able to get on a plane, come here and say, well, this is where I want to live for a while and I'm going to do this? And do we
Yeah.
want to get that control, I guess?
Well, it's a question of imagining a borderless world. Imagine that nobody cares. Imagine that there's no difference between the residency of or requirements for anybody anywhere in the world. I mean, how does that? How would borders are a creation of civilized behavior between countries, right? Because everybody had a fence somewhere between them, and they said, okay, on this side of the fence we do stuff like raise sheep. On your side of the fence, you plant wheat, as a absurd example, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, it's not really absurd. You sit back and wasn't that Gulliver's Travel? Right? Yeah. We crack eggs on the large side, and if you don't crack eggs on the large side, you're obviously wrong.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of talk about having the whole migration issue revamped in the eyes or in the image of a non-functioning bureaucracy, because it in fact non-functioning because there is no bureaucracy to run a borderless society. You don't need a bureaucracy. People just show up and carry on with their lives and inject themselves into another culture or to another community, and that community and that culture is supposed to say, yeah, that's cool. Now, whether it's reciprocal, it's another question. I mean, where does this go backwards and forwards? Because obviously, if people in today's migration mobility industry or complex, you have the poor and the disadvantaged moving to where there's advantage and less poverty, right? Isn't that the basic movement?
Seems that way, yeah.
Right. So that's the majority of that movement. Now, a small percentage of that obviously is displaced persons because of war or
Mhm.
famine or what have you. Um, so again, you are basically moving large segments of one population with a particular background into the community of another population of a
Yeah.
usually of a more sophisticated and better off background. Um,
Well, I
and
guess
so,
the other side of this thing is if you decide not to have borders and uh, willy-nilly travel of people to here, there, and wherever, would that get rid of this silly concept of war?
well,
I don't know.
that's another good question. I mean, we're really getting into the weeds here, but you're right. That is a good question. Why why would there be wars if there is no um, negative impact of people impressing themselves on other people? You know,
Mhm.
because that's usually what causes um, a grief to begin between people. And then
Mhm.
they invent reasons for not liking each other. And they could be race or gender or culture or
Yeah,
religion or
whatever. Yeah.
whatever. And then so I guess it comes full circle. And then they say, well, we can't have people who don't want to live in peace with us. You know, when I was a kid in school, back in elementary school, I remember a project that was done by some psychologists where they separated the kids with brown eyes from the kids with blue eyes. Do you remember that one? And they would say to the kids with the blue eyes, okay, you're going to have ice cream and cake, but the kids with brown eyes aren't going to have ice cream and cake. And they basically watched to see what would happen um, between the two groups of kids, children. And obviously, the kids that didn't get the ice cream were not happy. Uh, and so they felt hard pressed, and the kids with the ice cream felt that they were better, they were somehow superior. Okay, so the blue-eyed kids with the ice cream were now more superior to the brown-eyed kids with no ice cream. Very silly and stupid experiment, but in fact, what made that any different than what we're doing today?
Mhm. I hadn't heard of that one. I'd heard of the one about the one out of Harvard, where they divided the class of 50 into 25s, and the blue-eyed or the brown-eyed were the guards
Yes,
and could mete out punishment as they saw fit. And then halfway through the year, they reversed the roles, trying to figure out, well, would the people with the brown eyes treat the people with blue eyes any better? And it turned out no, they actually treated them worse.
sure, they had vengeance in their hearts.
So, and I guess coupled with that, would it get rid of war? I don't know. Would it get into a situation where you would have countries that say, God, we got a bunch of people here that we really don't want in our country, so let's buy them tickets to go to someplace else. Let them be their problem. Um, I guess that's part of the issues and concerns that you would have to have as a receiving country or as a migrant producing country. And do you keep some people in your country because they're doctors and you don't want to lose them, or do you ship off criminals because you don't want to have them in your jails and they're too big a problem? So free and open borders is a nice concept, but there's an awful lot of things that go on in the background that you really have to be aware of and think through.
Yeah, and what's happening globally is the numbers are really unmanageable to uh,
Yeah.
the host communities. It's just not possible. You know, you want to be able to help everybody, and you know the issue of everyone is given a leg up or helped up. But you know, at some point, this doesn't work anymore because the ability of the host community to absorb a continual influx of non natives, if you will, in the sense of of their background, their culture, their religion, their socioeconomic standing. At some point, that starts to break down. And I think we're starting to see this already, in various parts of the world. And in a microcosm, you see it happening in places like New York, where they have a couple of dozen busloads of migrants show up from Texas or from Arizona, wherever they may be shipping them up to, from rather, and they can't cope. And you're thinking, yeah, but you're already into some 6 million people who've entered the United States, and you're talking about a couple of thousand. Or the more
Yeah.
the more despicable version of that, somebody, I guess maybe 6 months to a year ago, I can't remember the exact date. You remember when they went to Martha's Vineyard, uh,
Mm.
the milk of human kindness went real sour real quick, when
Yeah.
these folks showed up. And interesting how that, we didn't want to see the great unwashed wandering around in the
Well,
pristine streets
and
of Martha's Vineyard.
the NIMBYs and the NIMBY complex it's alive and well. You pick any issue, and there's always going to be a NIMBY somewhere. Um, and you're right, it doesn't take long, but unfortunately, the people that seem to be in charge are the ones that want to be those elites, be it the Washingtonians, the Martha Vineyard types, the uh, what's the area in Ottawa,
Rockcliffe.
yeah, Rockcliffe. These are the people that seem to be the ones that are in charge and have the power and want to make the decisions as long as it doesn't affect their enclave and
Well, I'm sure there's not a lot of squatters in tent cities in English Bay, in your neck of the woods.
uh yeah, I don't know. I would.
Well, they're on East Hastings.
They certainly haven't made the news if they are,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
But
guess
I mean,
that's
this
part of
is
the
this is
problem.
typical of the NIMBYism. Is and curiously, the very people who are so adamant about doing something about it don't even live in those neighborhoods.
Mhm.
You know, but that's all about, as I think we spoke about having power. It's nothing to do with really worrying about your fellow man. It's if you're a politician staying in power.
Mhm.
Um, by the way, one of the things that came across the desk here while we were chatting earlier was that 9 in 10 in Canada, that's 89%, say that their country is a safe place to live, while half as many say the same thing, 43% in the US. This is a survey done by an outfit called Angus Reid, and this was done in March, so last month. Um, or I said 2 months ago. America, and I'll just give you a quick run out. It says Americans and Canadians are inextricably linked both by the largest international border and by a culture that oftentimes overlaps, even while maintaining distinction. And while both countries face challenges within their own political and social discourse, Canadians appear to have an advantage in terms of the harmony they perceive at home, even if it isn't unanimous. A new cross-border study by the nonprofit group Angus Reid finds Canadians more unified than Americans in viewing their country as a caring and safe place to call home and a positive contributor to the globe. Overall, 4 in 5 Canadians, or 78%, say their country is a caring society. Just 1 in 3 Americans say the same thing, 36%. 9 in 10 north of the border say they live in a safe country, 89%. Well, half as many, 2 in 5, say this to the south. Further, 62% of Canada say their country contributes positively in world affairs, while 39% of Americans say the same. Now, that's interesting because, our global reach by comparison is to the US is minuscule.
Yeah.
In some cases, Canada's advantage is significant, but perhaps less impressive in a vacuum. For example, Canadians are far more likely to say that their system of government is good than Americans, but still, just 51% feel this way, while 34% do so in the US. So, what's notable in this is that the favorable view that the Americans have of Canada compared to their own country is when on every item canvassed, Americans are more likely to feel favorably towards Canada more than their own country. This is most pronounced in two areas. 2/3 of Americans feel Canada is a safe country. That's at 64%, whereas 43% of this group say their own is. Additionally, more than 56% say that Canada is a caring country, 20% more than they would say that of the US at 36%. So that's a very interesting survey. Now, surveys being what they are, you can take some of those to the, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because if you ask those same people tomorrow the same questions, you're going to get a totally different response. So, uh, yeah, survey. It's another cottage industry that's growing up that really, I guess, gives you a snapshot of a moment in time. But that's really all it is. It shouldn't be something that should be looked at for making projections or drafting policies on.
yeah, but they do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unusual for politicians to stand up and use that sort of statistic to impress
That's right.
the voters.
Well, it's something that we've talked about before, isn't it? That 68.95% of statistics are made up on the spot.
Yeah. Now, some of the other things that popped across the desk from our friends at Border Hawk News, particularly the segment on the Eye on Europe, it says that U.S. net migration surged to a record high recently. In Sweden, nearly all librarians reject the obligation to reject illegal migrants to the authorities. In Germany, drunk Somalis attack riders and workers at a train station. Gangs of youth attack cars in London. In France, train passengers take down man rubbing knife on terrified woman's face. German officer under investigation for shooting knife-wielding migrant in asylum center. Then there are even broader impact news items that say senior Biden officials are pushing to send U.S. troops to South America to curb human smuggling. They can't seem to stop it at their own border, but they're prepared to send people into South America. The Turkey election that's coming up this weekend, the anti-migration leader is now backing Erdogan rival. So there's a change coming there. And surprise, surprise, Chinese firm caught selling fentanyl components to the Mexican drug cartel. So there's a snapshot of the broader migration portfolio in the European sphere.
Well, that's true. And the reality is that yeah, there's power, but it's not political power anymore. It just seems to be power for the sake of power. That does that mean I'm going to be more powerful and sell drugs, or I'm going to be more powerful and sell guns, or I don't know. It's power based. There's no question about it.
Wow. The situation is not one which seems to have any real positive news going forward on the migration side.
Yeah. Well, I guess starting off with like Freewheeling Friday, if you are a proponent of nobody is illegal, no borders, no this, no that, what's your plan B if it doesn't work?
You know, that's a very good question.
Because once you open it, that's like opening a floodgate on a dam. It just doesn't stop right away. You open that tap and it takes a long time to stop that particular flow of influx or whatever it is. And are you prepared to accept the good with the bad? A great many of the people that would come to Canada, to the United States, to Britain, France, Germany, I don't care where they would come to. Yeah. Maybe it's naive on my part, but I would think that the vast majority of those people would probably be pretty good.
Yeah,
Sit-
because I agree. And what is the challenge for any freewheeling discussion of the issue of migration, globally speaking, is that you don't become so narrowly focused on the bad uh, elements that are mixed in with the movement of human beings from one part of the world to the other. Because I would suspect they're percentage wise in most societies that's probably about the same. The
Mhm.
question is, does that percentage have a greater access to an opportunity to be on the move than others? And I think that's where the numbers get a little skewed. And you
Yeah,
have to be careful not to be, a proponent of a filter or a screening process that focuses on that aspect to the detriment of the positive
Mhm.
aspects of migration. That's not to say that you throw up your hands and you don't manage it. And I guess this is the conundrum that we're facing. That on the one hand, we accept all this, uh, but we know that if you don't have machinery in place to manage it, then nobody wins.
Mhm.
Really, becomes a social and economic uh, dysfunctional society. You know,
Yeah,
uh, so we're really flummoxed, I think, again, as to what we look to the leadership of various governments to come up with policies, and really, at the end of the day, the best policy is the one that everybody feels good about, which is let's try and get as many people on board with this, but at the same time be very good at screening out those that would make the process
yeah,
disreputable.
yeah. And I guess that's where it gets down. Many movies have been made about it where an apocalypse is coming, and it seems to me that the people that want to get on the ship to ride out the tsunami, get on a spaceship to get away from the inbound destructive asteroid, are the people that think that they are the best because they've been running the countries, or they're the richest, or they have this, or they have. And I guess it goes back to what I said before. We could take the cream of the crop, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good. If you don't take that one person who happens to have the an Albert Einstein, for you know, nobody knew that he was going to be a genius until he was what, 26, 27 years old. And if you don't give him a chance, then would that spark be ignited? Would you have a better place? I don't know. That's getting almost too
It's deep.
deep. Yeah.
But this is the, I guess there lies the crux of the matter. This is a very the issue of migration is not a simple one. It's not an easy, it's not a black and white, it's not even gray.
No, no,
you
it
know
is. It's the it's a
and and
definitely multicolored. Yeah.
yeah, and of course it's very much a creature of the times. Okay, when people talk historically about migration trends, they really don't bear a lot of resemblance to any situations that occur in the present time, simply because the technology was different or the geopolitics were different.
Mhm.
Human nature wasn't different, but everything else is a yardstick or a meter stick or whatever stick you want to use is different.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
the only part I think that of this whole discussion that we'll see fairly soon impacting the whole issue of migration is where we will be with respect to the economy uh, in the next couple of years, globally speaking, because I think we're on the precipice of some awful times. when the cavalier discussions, I use the word advisedly, cavalier discussions that are happening south of the border to us over their default uh, situation. Okay, uh, the impact of that should they default is we just don't know what the impact
Mhm.
is. Okay, look, the United States has downloaded billions of dollars of debt by printing money onto other countries who now have no interest in maintaining the dollar as the instrument of currency for the world. So, inadvertently, or perhaps on purpose, the folks decided to pursue this avenue of financial uh, gains going forward with talk about a default, which would then give strength to the fracturing of the global financial situation for mere mortals like us who are not economists or whatever. If all of a sudden the US dollar isn't something to be used around the world, what will they be using?
Mhm.
Well, they have, by omission of any real strong leadership, allowed the multipolar world to explode. Okay, and so it's suddenly a very confused situation, but one which human nature says, you know what, I'll go with whoever's got real liquid assets that I can understand. And so when you look at the non G7 countries that are going into this gold backed or resource backed monetary system, people understand gold, they understand oil, they understand silver, and so forth. They understand diamonds. They don't understand a bunch of paper that's printed with dead presidents on it that show it may be worthless.
Mhm.
Because if we go into a situation and they're talking about the digitization of global currencies, wow, you think you're going to have a lot of faith in any more than in the ones that have dead presidents on it? If it's run by the government and you get a
Well,
bunch of zeros and ones on your phone,
yeah.
that's what you're worth.
Well, that and I'm still not a great cryptocurrency kind of fan because you can't tell me that that's worth anything. Whereas that's got a value to it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it, I can feel it, I can touch it.
Yes.
Where I just can't grasp this whole thing of it being in the air. What is a crypto dollar worth now, supposedly to the greenback? Like, and that may change next week. I don't know. Will the cryptocurrency decide to go to this new global conglomerate and switch it to that? I don't know.
Well, to some extent, I'm already like you and everybody else in the modern world. We already have a kind of digital currency because right now I can tell you I have $5 in my actual money in my pocket or in my wallet. I have a fiver. I don't have any change in my pocket. When I go to buy gas or I go to the restaurant or I go to the grocery store, I have my debit card or my credit card. And that's
Mhm.
digital already for all
Mhm.
intents and purposes. Okay. Because as soon as I've bought my a bunch of bananas at the grocery store, it shows up in my bank account and it's been removed
Mhm.
for the cost the bunch of bananas was. So we're there. But at the moment, it's between me and my bank. Uh,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so there's some
Yeah.
element of trust between the two of us. But as soon as certain politicians decide that they are going to, through their central banks, make this sort of digital currency into their digital currency, which that I'm not too keen on.
No.
I'm very concerned, and I saw an ad just the other day from a woman who represented the Bank of Canada and was asking for people's opinion on the digital currency because the premise of her discussion was, or her pitch was that the world is moving to a digital currency. So they're wanting the input of us mere mortals on what did we think, which suggests to me they've already decided to do this. This is gaslighting of the
And
first
I
magnitude.
guess the other side of that is that we've seen how bad governments can mess up without even trying. So
Come on, are you're not suggesting that they're imperfect?
why would I trust them with my money, you mean?
Yeah, come on. Don't they always tell you at election time, trust me? I'm here from the government. I'm here to help you.
That used to be the case.
Uh, uh,
And maybe this whole issue of cryptocurrency would work several generations ago when politicians had some element of trust and trustworthiness. I don't see any of that in any government at this point. They're in it for themselves. They're looking to consolidate their power bases. They want you to act like them, think like them.
well, the smearing of democratic values, if you will, by a plethora of actors in let's just go with the G7 for the moment, because they're the ones who seem to be wrapping themselves in this holier than thou attitude, yet they do precisely the opposite. You have whistleblowers in the U.S. Congress who are actually exposing the level of corruption in the Justice Department and the FBI that, if true, is just earth-shattering, literally. And then you have in Canada a government that will tell you that there's nothing to see here about the Chinese election meddling, and then appoint a pal of the government, and then that person says, well, there's nothing to see here, and therefore there's nothing to see here, and everybody's standing around with their mouths open saying, what are you talking about? They shut down inquiries and investigations in the UK into things that are clearly criminal in nature, but they shut them down because
Yeah.
it won't sell in this.
So I guess that goes back to my point that are you willing to put your currency into that kind of a system?
No,
Maybe not. Maybe not.
I don't. I wouldn't. But then who are we? We're just mere mortals in this.
Yeah.
In this whole.
And if they decide tomorrow we're whether we like it or not, we kind of get lumped in with it. But
well, listen. At some point, these very same people who clearly don't have a great deal of love of the public, broadly speaking, because they don't. None of them do. I mean, they really don't. We do not have any sort of broad support for politicians or leaders, because they're not the kind of leaders that you expect to have in times of serious crisis. They're just nowhere to be found. They just aren't there. Now, either they're hiding under rocks, or they're smart people who could do that, who you would respect and go, I don't need the grief. I don't know what the elements are that bring out the best in those people, but at the moment we're not able to draw them out. And so we live in very, I think, stressful times. And if the discussion about migration and refugee determination and the movement of people around the world butts up into a situation where all of a sudden the economy goes south, I mean, seriously, because of the ineptitude of the leadership we have today across the world. I mean, literally, in the books, right? Name me one man or woman who really is an outstanding, well-respected person in the international community, serving right now as head of state or of an organization. And we could put that out on a poll at the end of this discussion. And I'm going to ask the folks who are watching, name me the person who you think is an outstanding contributor to mankind right now, people kind, person kind, whatever silly euphemism that the
Yeah, yeah.
goofies want to talk about. But this is what we're name one, okay? Now don't give me some old political jargon.
No.
I
Well,
don't.
yeah. I mean, if you had asked that, I could think of several people, but I could, from just from a Canadian perspective, say, yeah, that's somebody I respected. That's somebody I looked up to. That's somebody that I would trust. Maybe not with my money, but it's somebody that I would trust. Um, I'd be very hard pressed to do that now, to say that I would trust anybody.
No, and what makes it even worse is some of the names that you might have come up with in a previous time have since then turned out to be not who they were.
Well,
Hey, listen, everyone's got skeletons in their closets, and nobody's perfect.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But right now, I think the biggest malaise in the world writ large is that the real look up to leadership types just don't seem to be there.
And you're right. The ones that would do a bang up job, that would be super at it, are probably, well, not probably, they aren't interested. Like, why would I put myself on a public stage where, if I happen to have burped inappropriately at a state dinner once, is going to be broadcast, and that's going to be a big fault that everybody's going to remember. Like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally inconsequential, totally meaningless.
Yeah.
But that's really where we've managed to slip to nowadays. But anyway, yeah, I see we're kind of wrapping down to the magic minute here, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see where comments are coming from, and what comments we get back on this. Not to be.
Yeah. This is free for all Friday, but this is more like Downer Friday because
We've
boy,
talked about that before, right? There's not that much in the way of good stories out there that you can.
well, this one, and then there's really this week is, apart from the fact we did two, which is that's inspiring, but the rest of the world has not been inspiring for us. I'm afraid.
Well, they can only look to us for betterness, you know.
Wow, then we're really in trouble.
We should start a border poll bucks campaign.
There's an idea. Anyway, for our American friends, it's Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy your Memorial
Yes,
Day.
enjoy, and yeah.
Think about those who did all the things they had to do so that you can do the things you want to do today.
Mm-hmm.
That's all about. As for us, we'll be back next Friday or so.
Or so. We might even try for a
You never
three.
know. Well, listen, we'll have to watch. It's 20. Today's the 26th, so we're 5 days away from the so-called X day of the default. That's going to be very big news.
Yeah.
Of course, it could be a dud too, and they'll fudge it for the 98th time. Believe it or not, they've done this 97 times since the Second World War. Maybe for the 98th time they'll come up with the loose change and it'll be okay. But if not, we'll have lots to talk about because we don't know where this is going to take us.
We just hope that there's a plan B somewhere,
or a C, or a D, or an F. Ooh, not good. All right, bud. Well, you take care.
And you do have a good weekend.
And for those watching, don't forget to like it, ding the bell, and all that stuff.
And leave comments.
And leave comments. Absolutely. All right, bud. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.